I have OCD. I know there's kind of a push to use the term neurodivergency instead of mental disorder, and that's great. Basically, all of what people with ADHD or autism have to go through is the fault of society, and I think it'd be great to change that. OCD is definitely a mental disorder. There's something wrong with me. If there was a cure, I would take it. So first off, what is OCD? That's not really first off, actually. That's kind of the whole premise of this video, but it's more or less about how your brain produces and interacts with intrusive thoughts. So, as much as I hate sounding like my therapist, let's talk about pink elephants. I'm purposely not showing an image for this, but just by bringing it up, it should make you think about them. That's an intrusive thought. You didn't try to think about that. I'm the one who put the idea in your head. That was pretty harmless. OCD is not harmless. So instead, the next time you're driving on the highway, imagine yourself ramming the steering wheel to the left. Imagine what it would look like, what it would feel like. That's more like OCD, except your brain does this on its own, constantly, for everything you're doing. That's a bit of an exaggeration. It does ebb and flow a bit, but basically, whatever you're doing, your brain is always conjuring up a distressing scenario. These are the obsessions. Now, it's important, for me at least, that just because you have obsessions about doing something doesn't make it more likely you are going to do it. In fact, the fact that they are so distressing for you indicates they're especially incongruous with your sense of self. This is comforting to know when your mind is constantly filled with images of you hurting or violating others. Now, a lot of what I know is based on my own experience, so this is mostly to deal with the guilt OCD. I am going to do something bad. For fear OCD, something bad is going to happen to me, which includes contamination and picking under your skin. Go to a different video. But that's obsessions. What about compulsions? Well, compulsions are your brain's scattered attempts to survive the constant barrage of obsessions, usually repetitive actions that somewhat logically counteract the fear. Of course, since the fear is unwarranted, the compulsions are unnecessary and often downright harmful. Plus, they reinforce the same feedback loop. But that doesn't stop us from doing them. Washing your hands, tapping on things over and over, repeating phrases in your mind, chewing on things, checking. So much checking, that's probably the most universal one now. These rituals only make up a small, sizable part of our compulsions in general. Going back to the car example, if every time you had to drive you imagined crashing, you would simply not drive anywhere. This is called avoidance, where you stay away from things that trigger you, which unfortunately often involves kind of important things like being around people. In general, compulsions are the real danger. No matter how many bad things I imagine myself doing, the only tangible danger is from what I do to avoid that. Lots of people become convinced they're going to harm someone and kill themselves to prevent that, which I've never considered, or that they're going to become a rapist and castrate themselves to prevent that. And I still... And not to mention scrupulosity, because this is all tied up in my conceptions of religion and my standing there, so I also have confessing as a compulsion, which you could argue is what I'm doing by making this video. There really is no escaping it. But this video is about one specific compulsion, mostly because it's hard to explain. It's not just that I don't like stepping on sidewalk cracks, because I do that sometimes. So the rest of this video is going to be about various flooring patterns and how you're allowed to walk on them. I have no idea why this is my thing. My best guess is that if I'm not staring at my feet, I might see a woman and find her attractive, which, as previously stated, means I will go to hell. So while I'm looking down there, I might as well find something to do. So let's start with simple sidewalk squares. There's actually nothing simple about this. There are pretty much 3 patterns, and my diagrams will assume my feet are perfectly elliptical and in a vacuum. So depending on my stride length, I might be able to do 2 steps per square or 1 step. And then there's the case of 2 steps for 1 square, top and bottom, and 1 step for the other square in the middle. I'm also not entirely opposed to center crack center, but then you have to make sure you're stepping within the same column. And if the tiles are small enough that you can't fit a foot in, then you step on only the cracks. It's very important to note that whenever you step on a crack, the arch of your foot has to be directly over it. Now, all that's assuming the tiles are all the same. If there are patterns, it gets more difficult. Ideally, you can do a pattern of stepping only on one color or alternating colors. You cannot step on a line between 2 colors. So if we have a checkerboard of tiles that are smaller than your feet, you have a bit of an issue. Ideally, you can alternate columns and hopefully either believe that your toes poking out doesn't count or just walk on your toes. So over to stripe tiles. You cannot step on a tile with horizontal stripes. Your foot must be going the same direction as the stripes. Ideally, it's a simple checkerboard and you can use one of the above patterns. If the layout of these tiles is irregular, try to plan ahead, but don't be afraid to take a giant step if you need to. And now we have the offset pattern. I don't really like an offset pattern. If the tiles themselves are rectangular, you're going to want to align your foot with it so that it's got like a margin around it. So if you're walking along the offset, it should be fine. You can even step on a crack. But if you have to walk across the offset, things become more complicated. Obviously, you can't step on the crack between two because then you're stepping on the left side of one tile and the right side of the other. So I'm not opposed to sidewalking or walking as if these bits are completely through the tiles. Now, this is called herringbone, and it's the worst. You can try to walk only in the oblong tiles, but they're usually too small for your feet. Not to worry, there is a solution. If you take these three tiles and half of the fourth, they form something approaching a rectangle with sticky outy bits. It's not comfortable, but it's safe to step on this one. Now, with hexagons, there's a bit of a dichotomy. They're arranged in such a way that it makes it seem like there's a straight line down this way, so it makes the most sense to step angle to angle. However, if the hexagons are so small you can't put a foot inside, you have to step side to side on the edges. Concentric squares are somewhat common as well. Step between the lines. For mosaic or irregular patterns, it's going to be bad. Get out of there as fast as you can. Don't step on lines. Get back to somewhere where there's vertical lines and align yourself with them. Fortunately, cobblestones tend to be large. But zinny up, I can already hear you asking, what about organic patterns or carpeting? Way ahead of you. This becomes a lot more complex, so we need to upgrade the foot model. We have major points on the balls of the feet, a fuzz of toes, a ridge along the outside of the foot, and a bowing on the inside into the giant mark on the heel. This creates a sort of curve on the inside, which you can take advantage of if you see something like this. In general, all carpeting patterns are somewhat tileable, so you can probably find a series of straight lines somewhere to step along. A lot of them also feature plant imagery. A vine or a branch can provide such a foundation. Now, you may point out that it seems like all I'm doing here is pacing around, but I do that a lot, because pacing is also a compulsion, but it helps me think about my obsessions, which is called ruminating, and it's also a compulsion. There is no escape.